The Deacon Jones Award watch list is 50 players long, but if we're being honest, we know a quarterback is most likely to win it. So let's break down that 50 to the 4 most likely candidates to get the award. Oh yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current site expert at Who Dat Dish and contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Now, when it comes to Monarch Money, it's up to you to take care of your finances, and using the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com, you can get 50% off your first year. We'll wrap up today's episode by taking a look at the Mississippi Valley State versus FAMU game that was originally supposed to be at Valley. Then it was moving to Atlanta, and now we don't know where it's going to be. And to me, that is the biggest problem. We're going to start off segment 1 and 2 with a look at the Black College Football Hall of Fame's National Player of the Year Award, a.k.a. the Deacon Jones Award. This is a 50-man list, and we'll get into some of the takeaways from the list in segment 2, but it's a 4-man race to me. To me, there are 4 players that you can identify as the most likely to win this award, and it comes down to positional value. Because at the end of the day, we know that MVPs, Player of the Years, these type of awards are quarterback-centric, I'd say 8-9 times out of 10. Last year, you had Jada Byers win it. That's a double exception. You don't typically see the D2 guy win it. Not anymore. You've seen that a couple of years ago. But it's been an FCS quarterback award for the last really 3-4 years prior to that. You know, you had Tariq Cohen, who was a running back who won it in the inaugural season. You had Amir Hall, who was a quarterback, but he was on the D2 level. Then you had Jada Byers, who was a D2 running back. Outside of that, it's been, then you had Chris Rowland out of Tennessee State. So they have mixed it up, showing a little bit of versatility. But over the last 3-4 years prior to last season, you did see it being a quarterback award. And I think that falls in line with pretty much the way that MVPs are treated in every sport, in every level of football. You're going to see that go to the quarterback. Probably 8 to 9 times out of 10. I don't think that the Deacon Jones Award is some exception or anything of the sort. So when I'm looking at this 50-man list, I go ahead and say swipe, 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 swipe. Yeah, we're going to narrow this down to these 4 guys. And those 4 guys is Jackson State's Jacobian Morgan, North Carolina Central's Walker Harris, Albany State's Isaiah Knowles, and then Johnson C. Smith's Kelvin Durham. Those are the 4 players that I think are the most likely to win this award at the end of the season. You typically have a running back who goes absolutely ballistic, but it's not often that they win this. Matter of fact, I was looking through the previous winners and I laughed to myself, and I wasn't sure if I was going to say it. I actually had no plans on saying it at all until I started thinking about it right now. And I said, you know what, this is a pretty good footnote. But I remember in 2023, yes, 2023, the year that FAMU won the Celebration Bowl, I had this big thing about feeling like, I can't remember the running back's name. That's Ladarius Owens? I think it was Ladarius Owens. The Texas Southern running back, I thought he was better than Jeremy Musa that year. And I still feel that way. But he didn't get the SWIPE Player of the Year. He didn't get the Deacon Jones Award. They actually split the Deacon Jones between Davius Richard and Jeremy Musa that year. This is a quarterback award. I use that only to say that I still feel like that running back season was a little bit better, but positional value and victories from a team would never let that actually come into play. So That was something just to note. That was something I thought should be noted. But quarterback award, we're looking at 4 quarterbacks. In 2024, you had Jacobian Morgan, who had 2,051 yards, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and he also had 4 touchdowns on the ground. Walker Harris had 1,882 through the air, 18 touchdowns, and then 6 interceptions. And I'm not going to give the running stats for everybody. This is more so with quarterbacks who did a lot of running, had a lot of success. Isaiah Knowles, he had 2,555 yards, 32 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Then Kelvin Durham had 2,096 yards with 23 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Did I give Knowles interceptions? He also had 8. So 3 of these guys had 8 interceptions. I guess that's just the magic number of sorts. But when you're looking at this set of quarterbacks, to me, they all step into 2025 with something to prove. You call it with whatever you want it to be. Morgan, Harris, Knowles, Durham, they all have something to prove going off of last season. And ironically, it's not a, because, you would like to say this guy was great last year. He was the SWAC player of the year, the MEAC, CIAA, SIAC. You would like to say that this was the player of the year and he's coming back. Kind of similar to Akil Glass. You don't have that this season. And I'm putting the emphasis on quarterbacks, despite the fact that you don't have the guy who was first or second in the race in 2024. They all have something to prove, and it may not feel like it, but I'm going to go through what each one of them needs to show us, whether it's ascension in status, whether it's ascension in play, whether it's pressure from your own team or pressure from the outside. Each one of these guys is in a prove-it season in 2025. So Jacobian Morgan, he has to prove that all of the offseason hype is justified. He has to prove that he can be the guy on a championship team because he was a really strong quarterback. But I do feel like that was Irv Mulligan's team in 2025. When it comes to Jacobian Morgan, everybody is putting a spotlight on him. He was a Walter Payton watch list, meaning FCS player of the year. He's the SWAC preseason player of the year. He's on this list, obviously. He's one of the guys that we're looking at to lead the charge as Jackson State attempts to have a repeat season. And as a quarterback, there's already a natural level of pressure. But then you add in what Jackson State has been. You add the Jackson State brand. You add the Jackson State fans. You add all of the talk, the Jackson State opposition, right? Like Jackson State fans and Jackson State oppositions talk about Jackson State so often. It's the talk of the SWAC, right? Whether it's coming from people who are actually fans of that school, or if it's coming from people who just want to take them down, want to see them fall, that all of that's there. Jacobian Morgan has a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and I think he has to step into being the engine of the offense. That's not something he was last year. I think it's something that he'll have to be this year, and I think it's something that he's capable of being, but there is still a pressure, no matter how much belief you have in a player. I think oftentimes when we say pressure, it tends to suggest a lack of belief, but it should not innately mean that. It shouldn't. There's pressure whether or not you think they can rise to the occasion or not. So then you got Walker Harris, who he's coming off of being Davius Rich's backup for a few years. Last year was his year to shine. Me personally, I felt like Walker left a little bit to be desired. There were moments, but I didn't feel like he had the consistency. And he's no longer living up to the pressure of, I got to get out of Davius' shadow. He's not living up to that. That was last year. And I don't want to say living up to that. He's not trying to prove that. That was last season to me. To me, 2024 was about Walker Harris carving his own legacy. It was about Walker Harris stepping out of the shadow of being a backup to one of the greatest quarterbacks in school history and being his own man. In 2025, the pressure is now you have to be better than you were last season. How many years does North Carolina Central need to be one game away? How many years do we need to sit here and say, man, if they could have got that one? Walker Harris is going to be a key part of making sure it's not a, man, if they could have got that one. Instead, it's because they won this game, the same way that it was in 2022. I keep getting these years a little mixed up, but that was 2022, and I think I got that on the nose this time. Isaiah Knowles, he's stepping out of the, not shadow, but he's stepping into the number one quarterback in the SIAC role. That's not what he was last year, right? Because you have to understand, we were all looking at Clark. We were all looking at David Wright. And it's not as if Knowles had a bad season. He had a really good season. I'm not asking for him to step up his play. See, that's the difference. You have Jacobian Morgan, who's trying to step up on his own team, a bigger role on his team. You have Walker Harris, who is occupying the same role, but he's trying to step up within it with his performance. Isaiah Knowles was great last year. Isaiah Knowles is just now going to be looked at as the top quarterback because David Wright is gone. And instead of fighting Wright for that position, we've kind of already given it to him. There's a difference in that, but he has to step into that, right? Because it's almost like, I don't want to say passing the torch, but there's a difference between being the number one and being the number two. It comes with a different level of scrutiny. It comes with a different level of expectation. It comes with a different level of expectation as far as team success. All of these things come into play, and I want to see how does Knowles step into it. And then as you look at Durham, I think expectations have risen for him as well, because as he goes from Fort Valley State to going to Johnson C. Smith, they're looking like, okay, now you got a wide receiver. Now you got a guy who we think is a stud. So how are you going to perform as a quarterback when you have a wide receiver who is extremely reliable, when you have a wide receiver who we expect a lot of? Because I'll tell you right now, if that receiving game doesn't, I don't want to say live up, because I don't know how much expectations are placed upon them as a unit. But if Campbell doesn't live up to his performance of 2024, we're not looking at him. We're looking at Kelvin Durham. So there's all this expectation. Everybody has to step up. And that's one thing that I feel like is the unifying bond between these four quarterbacks. But at the end of the day, this is a 4-quarterback race to me, unless some running back just comes and steals the charge. But let's not stop talking QBs. Everybody wants to talk about them, so why stop now? It's not just 4. There's actually 6 quarterbacks on this list, but the fact that it's only 6 tells me a lot, and we're going to break that down briefly as we go through our biggest takeaways, not just that one, as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. And Monarch Money is the go-to place for all of my finances. It doesn't matter if I'm trying to budget for myself, budget with my partner, budget for a trip, budget for a new car. These are all things that are going through my mind consistently. And that's why my mind consistently goes to Monarch Money. It doesn't matter what your financial goals are. You may just want to save. You may feel like you're spending too much. You may just want to evaluate your finances. I know a guy who, listen, he spends so much money on food deliveries like DoorDash and things of that nature. And then he goes and he gets Monarch Money and he realizes, I'm actually spending way too much. I need to hop in the car and go get the food if I'm going to eat it, because those delivery fees begin to add up. These are all things that people have realized and taken care of when it comes to Monarch Money. So will you be one of the next? All you have to do is, don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL or Locked On College Football. These are the biggest podcasts to listen to right now as we get into the beginning of each season. We're going to continue talking about the Deacon Jones Award watch list, because we highlighted the 4 quarterbacks who, in my opinion, are the leading candidates, because we picked one from each conference. That wasn't an accident, but we picked one from each conference. And to me, they're the leading candidates, though they're not the only quarterbacks who are on this list. So the next guy to highlight would be Andrew Body. And we know how I feel about Body, right? So when it comes to Andrew, I'm tired of holding on to things that I saw at Texas Southern, because at the end of the day, that Texas Southern season that I'm referencing was 2024, 3-2. It was 2022. That was 2022. And I'm tired of holding on to things that was 3 years ago. Now, it's not as if he's played poorly since then. He just hasn't played much because he's only played one game in each of those next 2 seasons. It allows me to still hold on to it, but at some point, he's going to have to justify it. He's going to have to capitalize on what we think that ceiling was in 2022. I don't even know if I can still say he has the same ceiling. There's injury concerns. There's things of that nature where I need him to come in 2025 and show me who he is. It's not only can you reach your ceiling, right? I think that's the difference in the Andrew Body conversation. when it comes to Andrew Body, I don't think that there's enough negative that we've seen since the year we were extremely hyped. The problem is we haven't seen enough football. So it's no longer can Andrew Body reach this ceiling. That's a 2023 conversation. That's a 2024 conversation. But with the time that he's missed, I don't know what that ceiling is. It's no longer can he reach the ceiling. It's what is his ceiling. And that's something that he'll have to prove in 2025. Matter of fact, I'd probably even go so far to say that he's lost the luxury of being a ceiling player. I know that he technically hasn't played much football, but we're no longer looking at him as a floor versus ceiling. It's what are you today, right? Like, forget your peaks, forget your valleys. Who are you as a quarterback? And these are questions that are going to have to be answered, not only for Body as an individual, but for Alabama State as an offense, who has always felt like, man, I wish we had a quarterback. This is the guy who's supposed to be that for you. Now it's time for him to prove it. And the first step is staying healthy. But the other guy on here is, and this was confusing to me because I think there might have been, it's not a typo, but I didn't see any CAA players on here. And you did have someone from the NAIA when you have Torrance Bardell, who is from Langston, and he's on the list. I just feel like it's very unlikely that an NAIA player wins this award if we're being completely truthful about it. It's just not likely that it happens. So I want to mention him, but the fact that Body is the only other FCS or D2 guy on this list other than the four that I named, it makes me feel like there's not a lot of guys you feel like that's a guy. You have some confidence. I'm sure certain people like Quad Brown. I think Quad Brown inspires confidence in Alabama A&M fans, but there's not many definitive, unquestionable, don't dare try to dispute it quarterbacks in not only the SWAC, which I feel like always gets they don't have good quarterback play. It's all around. It's all around. So I thought that was something that was worth noting. Jada Byers was the last guy to win this award. He was a running back, and now he's graduated. But I wanted to look at the Virginia Union running back situation. Excuse me. That was really interesting to me because they have two running backs on this list. Now, if you look at it, they're not going to say that Trayvon Tinsley is on Virginia Union. They're going to say that he's with Shaw. No. He's not with Shaw. He's on. Now, this is because Virginia Union hasn't released the rosters. Neither has Shaw, so I get it. But if you go to the CIAA all-conference team preseason, they'll say Virginia Union previously with Shaw. I had to do some digging to make sure that it wasn't an Armani Harris type of situation where he was going to leave and he went back to his old school. On Tinsley's huddle, still says Virginia Union. On Union's page about the all-conference players they have, it names Trayvon Tinsley. So we're going to treat Tinsley as a Virginia Union Panther right alongside Curtis Allen, who is properly, what am I talking about? He is properly, I don't even know what word I was trying to combine there. Anyway, he was properly listed as a Virginia Union Panther. And it makes me wonder, are you going to see a two-headed monster this year? More than you saw with Byers. Byers was the guy. Byers was the workhorse. Byers was a player who you're going to hand the ball to 100 times a game because you understood he could carry that workload and you understood he would produce consistently. Big time plays, touchdowns, critical moments. He was going to do all of that and some. But now that you don't have Byers, you have the option to go to a two-headed attack. And the fact that you have two players on this list, to me, I'd say why not? Why are we not going a two-headed monster? Use Tinsley, who had 5 yards per carry last year. Use Allen, who had nearly 7 yards per carry last year. Use these players. Like at the end of the day, it's very rare that you get a coach who cares about your individual success. To be honest with you. Now, once you reach, let's say that this is the bar for a metric and you're like close. They may try to get you to hit that metric. But all in all, I don't think that most coaches really care about your individual metrics. They care about the team success. And then once we find a team having success, where can we get your individual success from there? That's a different conversation. But I don't think they're looking here like, we got two backs, but we really got to get Curtis Allen that Deacon Jones Award because he was here for a while. He has earned his way up. They're not saying that. Dr. Alvin Parker isn't saying that. He's not. So I think that both running backs are very dynamic. They've shown the ability to have big time plays. And also Tinsley has a build similar to Byers, 5'9", 176, Byers, 5'7", 185. You could see a more complimentary role, but you could see neither one of these guys really catch the football. So I wonder if that changes for either one of them, but they're both real running backs, true running backs. And the last thing I want to highlight is that Jacobian Morgan, oh my gosh, you are set up because that receiving attack is going to be insane. There are 9 wide receivers on this list. This is a crazy stat, but there are 9 wide receivers on this list. Of the 9, Jackson State has 3. Nathan Rembert, Shamar Savage, Jonas Fortillion. I was about to call him Jacobian Fortillion. I don't know why I'm confusing names today. But when you look at that Jackson State passing attack, it's set up for Jacobian Morgan to succeed because he's on this list. Jacobian Morgan's on this list. Jonas Fortillion's on this list. Nathan Rembert's on this list. Shamar Savage is on this list. That is an insane amount of players that not only are on the same team, but specifically work together. The wide receivers and quarterbacks work together directly. I'm not just talking, oh, you have an offensive lineman and a running back. I mean, like the wide receiver doesn't get the ball without Jacobian Morgan. He has 3 players who are elite to throw to. We've always talked about how great that this receiving core is. This truly drives it home. But as we drive home today's episode, we're going to take a look at where is Mississippi Valley State versus FAMU going to be played. That's a question that needs to be answered. I don't have it. And the problem is that I don't have the answer. So let's break it all down as we continue and wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. When it comes to Mississippi Valley State versus FAMU, I've had questions about this pretty much every step of the way because AD Suggs originally said, yeah, FAMU is going to be in Atlanta this year. And I'm not just talking about the Celebration Bowl. We're going to be playing Atlanta when we play against Mississippi Valley State. And the Mississippi Valley State came out and they said, yeah, we're going to be playing FAMU in Atlanta, Falcon Stadium, baby. You know what it is. I didn't understand why that game was ever in Atlanta. And I said that. I don't think that Valley is a big enough draw for me to sit here and tell you that they deserve to have a game in Atlanta. I just don't. And I make a lot of jokes and I take a lot of shots towards Mississippi Valley State, but I'm being so serious when I say this. I never understood why we would make that move. I never understood why FAMU, I understood why FAMU would be there. I didn't understand why FAMU versus Mississippi Valley State would be there. And I also didn't necessarily feel like the FAMU matchup was a big enough game or FAMU's brand was a big enough draw to carry Valley. So I just this never made sense to me. So, you know, call it how you want to call it, but I was not a fan and it didn't make sense, but cool. Excuse me. It didn't make sense. Let me not say I wasn't a fan, but it just never put it together. And as my friend Red would say, it seems like one of these institutions got caught fronting a move. All right. Because they don't have this game on the official calendar when it comes to the Atlanta Falcon Stadium. I don't really like calling it that because we were called that first. So it kind of makes me mad, but I'll say it. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, right? You go through it. It's not there. It's not on the calendar. And you would think it would be by now. The game is supposed to be October 4th. We're at August 13th. That means you have less than 2 months to make it as far as housing, right? Like or lodging, I should say. Where are you going to live? Transportation. If you have to fly, you want to try to get your tickets, right? And some people, I don't know when people start getting their tickets, man. But some people are trying to get them now. What's happening in the city? I was reading this HBCU Game Day article, and I'll put this into the description as well. But they were talking about how people are already scheduling events catered towards FAMU fans in Atlanta. Now, I hope it happens because at the end of the day, it is a great opportunity. It is it's cool. This doesn't move me in general, but the lack of certainty does move me. It does bother me. I don't care about whether or not they play in Atlanta. Like, it's a game, right? And it's not a game I'm overly excited for. I don't care that Valley broke FAMU's home stadium record or a winning streak. Maybe if it was back in FAMU, I'd be excited. Maybe then, like, oh, okay, you're back at the scene of the crime. And last time y'all played, it was but it's not that. So this doesn't move me. So forgive me if I seem a little bit indifferent to the game itself. But you have people who are calling Mississippi Valley State, and they're saying they're going to be, or details will be forthcoming. This is coming from the HBCU Game Day article I told you I would put in the description. But it seems like they excuse me. I'm trying to put in my own words, but let me quote exactly what is being said. A representative said, this is quote, a representative said details about the event were still forthcoming. Further questions revealed that the department had no knowledge of the specifics for the proposed Atlanta game. Then it said, you asked FAMU about it, and they say, yeah, the game is Valley's home contest, so all the questions, all the information is going to come from them. But I know that these schools often sell away tickets, so you would think they would have some information, and it feels like nobody knows. And when nobody knows, everybody should be scared. Let that be a slogan. When nobody knows, everybody should be scared, because what is happening with FAMU versus Valley? I don't know. You don't know. It doesn't seem like they know. And unfortunately, you have people who are putting money into situations that are, or events that are being built around this game. You have people who are putting money into travel, into lodging. People are buying hotels, and I hope that they're refundable, because I don't know what's going to happen. And it doesn't seem like there's certainty on either way. Actually, I really hope that the game just ends up happening so that everybody who has been investing, has been putting money in, can feel like, okay, cool. I didn't make a mistake. I don't have to go through all of these hoops to try to make my money back. But whoever you are, if you ain't spent the money, don't spend it yet. Wait till you get true official confirmation. And we can't get that from Valley, can't get that from the Falcons, can't get that from the Rattlers. Well, can get confirmation from me that I'll be back here tomorrow. I think we're really going to talk about this Vic news now, but the Deacon Jones Award breaking, it was more important to me. It was more pressing. So I wanted to go through that and talk about that. Until the next time that we hear to the family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.